I've got a chapter in the book about the broke millionaire, and this person, no matter how much more they make, they just spend to that limit. So it's not always about how much you make. I have seen people with very low salaries acquire or build, a nice portfolio over time and have nothing to worry about. So it's what we save, it's what we spend, it's what we earn on our money.
Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello. Welcome to the Money and You show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. Super excited about today's show. I love my guests, typically all of them, but today is really special because this particular guest really gets it, this idea of your relationship with money, and writes about it, speaks about it, uses it in her practice. And she's really, I have to say, the perfect guest for this show. So without further ado, you're going to love this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Amy Cook. So please welcome Amy Cook, founder and financial advisor at Maven Lane Financial Group. Amy's career spans over 20 years in financial services, transitioning to financial advising in 2009. She's the author of the Amazon bestseller, Your Money Narrative, which delves into how personal experiences shape financial behaviors and decisions. As Amy worked on her own money narrative, she helped her clients do the same with a mission to build lasting legacies through effective financial decision-making and strategies. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. So we spoke a little bit, and I was just, so tickled that what you're talking about is exactly what I feel like people need to hear. So, I think this is going to be a great conversation because we're going to talk about exactly what this show is designed to help people understand. It's about your relationship with money, your thoughts, beliefs, feelings, how they impact your decision making. Tell us a bit about how you decided that this would be a big part of, how you help people.
Yeah, so, I've been in the business for about 15 years now. And over the years, I just noticed that, there were repetitive stories that I would hear, over and over again. And as I kind of listened to other people's stories, I started diving into my own story and questioning some things like, why do I keep doing this over and over? And as I did that, I learned a lot about myself, and I was able to grow from it and make, positive changes. So it just sort of evolved over time to write about it. And I find that most of my clients that I've worked with, they don't really want to get into the granular detail about financial terms. They just want to understand. And I feel that stories is a great way to relate and find commonality and learn from others' mistakes or others wins and then grow from there.
Yeah, thank you. And we talk a lot on this show about the ideas and beliefs that come from our childhood and how they sort of, linger around in our subconscious mind and show up when we're making adult decisions later. And can you speak a little to how your childhood impacted some of your money ideas and beliefs?
Yeah, absolutely. So the story I write about myself in the first chapter and, being the youngest of five, my parents went through some hard financial times when I was, 6, 7 years old, and we lost our house. I remember as a little girl just seeing it being all about money. And of course it was, because we wouldn't have lost our house if we had had more money. But in my little brain, I didn't understand how much money we were talking about, what would have solved the problem. I didn't know if there were financial habits in place that could have changed the direction of things. So I just saw the emotion around the stress with my parents and my dad. And I thought, well, I don't want to ever feel like that. So the solution is to make money. So I spent a good chunk of my life just trying to run around in circles and stack my coins and my bills so that I would never have to feel that way. But obviously, looking back, there's so much more to it than that. But it's a good example of how it formed a narrative, and it served me in some ways. As soon as I could get someone to give me a job or a buck to do something, be it starting my own babysitters club, or running around with paper routes and stuff like that, I jumped on those opportunities. But a lot of it was based out of fear, and I don't know that that was the healthiest way to go about managing that.
Yeah, thank you. I know I even, I look at my own kids and they're only 3 years apart, but different things were going on when each one was young. And for my daughter, I think there was a little more financial upheaval, but we've just done a big switch and sold a business and my husband started something new. And there was a lot going on in that moment. And you think your kids, I guess we tell ourselves this because it makes us feel better, but we think they're oblivious, or we think they're not paying attention kind of to not just the words, the energy. I mean, they can feel stress even if you never say I'm stressed. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really curious. I know you've raised a couple of kids. I mean, for people listening, because even when I hear this, I have to go in my head and think, oh my gosh, what have I said recently that might impact, a child? And I think I've had parents kind of freak out going, oh my gosh, I've said these things around my kids. What do you think is I don't know if you expected parenting advice on the show, but I'm asking anyway. Any thoughts on how parents, I don't know, can navigate this a little bit?
I do have thoughts on that, and I think that anyone that's listening, to your show is obviously interested in, self-improvement and, making things better, right? But there's a lot of households where people have, so many issues around money, talking about money, good feelings, bad feelings, negative, positive, or whatever. It's tough because that then, goes to your kids. If you don't have a positive relationship with money, or emotions around it and putting it in its place, and that it's just money, it's really hard to then raise your kids in a money positive way. So I mean, I was a single mom for many years, and I know I screwed my kids up. I mean, I was always just kind of lecturing and lessons and tidbits and things, and thinking that that was the right thing to do. And obviously not always, because sometimes, kids don't need that or want to hear that. But I think talking about it is really good, and not talking about money and just having stressful things going on and not addressing it in any way when
Mm-hmm.
we both know that they know something's going on is part of the problem. And if, parents sat down and just said, look, we got this going on, it is what it is, we're going to get through it, and make that a non-emotional event,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe those attachments wouldn't form in an unhealthy way. But, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't have a degree in psychology. I mean, but just observing my own patterns.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I think I have had somebody with a degree in psychology, and I think she said the same thing. I don't ask that question often, but I did ask her, and yeah, I think she gave a very similar answer. So I think you're very spot on. And I think, yeah, it's not talking about it. That's a problem when we never talk about it. And it's not even talking about it realistically, as long as, like you say, I think there's not this very strong emotion around it, because where does that lead? If kids start connecting the dots and they think that money creates, just some devastating emotional impacts, you know, how does that play out in the future?
And it can't, and I have to say, my dad specifically, he was the breadwinner. He did talk about it, but it was very black and white. It was like, we're broke.
Mm,
Well, what does that mean? You know, we can do this week. We can't afford to do it. Everything was just one or over here or over here, and it didn't feel like there was a lot of in between. So you kind of run around, and then as kids, I know in my household, like if I started asking a bunch of questions about things that were none of my business, I got in trouble.
yeah.
So I had to kind of just accept the answers that I received. So I think that there's a healthy balance, and I also think that there's things that maybe patterns, habits, decisions that would have to change on the other side, and we sort of pass these things along generation to generation. And if we're not equipped with the tools to do things differently, then how do we change it? So the key is really just some education around basic planning, and it's really sad that we don't have that in our high schools,
Yeah.
because we all have to deal with our money.
Hmm.
But I mean, that's we can delegate pieces of that out, but ultimately we have to have a hold on it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you're right about high school, because the next thing you know, kids are in college. And I've had several guests on the show talking about how that's when it all went down, because they got talked into credit cards they shouldn't have had and things like that, and didn't know how to use them, and got themselves into a lot of debt. Had to spend years pulling themselves out to get back to some just level footing so they could continue on. So if you had some information in high school, it sounds young, but it's not, because it's funny how we make this leap from as soon as you're in college, you have access to all of these things, and you probably have a job or something. And then when you're out of college, that's even weirder, because then you're expected to be an adult, and you've got the degrees, you get the job, you're making an actual salary, and you have no idea really what to do with that. So,
Right. I mean, I think it could start even earlier than high school
yeah,
myself,
yeah.
but I mean, you look at just, the credit cards, like you said, and the number of these kids that have no idea how the interest even works.
Hmm. Hmm.
They don't realize when they're paying those minimum payments that that's just money they're just giving away. They're just flushing down the toilet, to pay for things that they probably don't even remember buying.
Yeah.
Um, and they are bombarded with offers that they can take, regardless of whether they have the ability to pay it back.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot out there. I mean, it's not surprising that as a country, financially, well, as a country financially, we're not doing that great either.
Hmm.
But just, statistically speaking, that there's so many problems from a personal finance standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So how, what were you doing before you became a wealth advisor? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, so I've been in this business for 15 years. Prior to that, I was in the mortgage business. And that's really when I decided to shift over. I was in the mortgage business before the bust, and I just felt like I was dealing with my clients on a reactive basis. They would take money out, and then a year later, you wipe everything clean, you pay off the credit cards, you pay off the debt, and it would come back. And so it became very clear that it was a habit, versus just a single catastrophe over, losing a job or, a short-term problem. And then at that time, my father passed away, and I was able to see all of these loose ends in his picture, and dealing with my mom through all of that. And it was like simple stuff that could have been fixed pretty easily and would have created a much more peaceful, um,
Right.
dealing with the grief and everything else. Just not dealing with some very basic things would have been, better for everyone. And I thought, he didn't know. He
Yeah.
didn't, you don't know what you don't know. And so I really wanted to get on the other side of it and be proactive and say, hey, you could put X, Y, and Z in place, and you don't have to worry about this worst, it's a worst case scenario, but it's not. Eventually, we're all going to die. I mean, death and taxes is certain for all of us. We don't know when, but, putting some basic things in place can really make life a lot easier for your loved ones when you do pass. And I think that that's really an amazing legacy to leave. And it's not just for people who have a lot of money, it's for everyone. And if you have minor children, it's especially important to make sure that you have things laid out so that the people that you want caring for your kids are caring for your kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a topic that I could talk all day about as well. And yeah, I do try to have people on discussing this because, I had a whole separate new financial education when my parents passed. And my parents were fairly sophisticated on that stuff. And yet there were still things that it could have been much easier. So it's really, really good to understand that and to have an advisor. Actually, one of the best tips I got was from their financial advisor. When I was my dad actually, before he passed, had introduced me to her, and we met a few times, so because he really wanted me to get to know her and understand their situation. And yeah, she warned me about some things that I would have never guessed, like bank accounts freezing their funds and things like that. And she was just not only was she knowledgeable, but she really understood what I was trying to do and where I was in the process, and was giving me some excellent help. So I think
That's such an amazing gift that for your dad to do that. I have so many clients that are multi-generation, and I always encourage people, bring your kids in well before anything's wrong. You're healthy, you're fine, and that's the time to do it. But a lot of people don't do that, and for a lot of us, it's hard to say, oh, if I start talking about this stuff, it means something's going to happen. And I always kind of joke with people, hey, if you buy the life insurance, it means you're not going to die, because the insurance company always wins, So, but there's just a peace of mind in knowing, if you're panicking and you say, hey, come meet the financial advisor and just call him or her if anything happens. I mean, what a gift.
Yeah, I have to give him, a lot of credit for that. He really was concerned with that, and frankly, thank goodness that he did that, because there was so much I had to do just to be able to look at things, to talk to her about specifics, and fortunately we had a little window of time there where I could get all the paperwork in order and I could be on the accounts and, things that I needed to have. So I wouldn't have known any of that. And it was nice to get some of those things done, when you could, because like you said, you really don't want to be spending all this time on financial details when you want to be spending time with your people, when they're ill or whatever. So yeah, that's there's so much to learn there. And I will forever be grateful to the financial advisor who helped me through that process. And she was very compassionate and also, just really helped me understand things. So, yeah, you have a huge role in people's lives. And, I don't think everybody kind of accesses the help that you provide in the same way, but the people who do see you as a partner in their life and somebody that they can ask all kinds of questions of, I mean, with limits, but still.
I don't know. Sometimes there's no limits. I'm like, I'm here if they need me. But yeah, I mean, and especially during crisis, it's really important to have a strong team.
Yeah.
Just kind of in your financial court, if you will.
Yes. So if we circle back to this idea of, beliefs and how they impact your financial decisions, you've written this fabulous book about, I love the angle you took with the narratives, these sort of fictional stories that help people to understand very specific financial situations. And kind of how regular people are going to address them and some of the things that maybe they're not thinking about. It's just so cleverly done. I loved it.
No,
So,
thank you. Thank
yeah, and
you.
it's really illustrates things in a way that I think most people can't see from just having it described. Do you want to just kind of give us a sample of what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, the book is really just a group of fictional stories, loosely based on common stories, and common dilemmas that, you may or may not go through during your lifetime. But it's, sending kids off to college, kids getting jobs, divorce, death, but or buying a second home, inheriting money.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of different topics, and I tried to make them, just regular people, that I mean, because I work with regular people, so it may not be a story that you relate to for yourself, but maybe your sister or your neighbor or your uncle. And then the first half of the chapters is the story, and then the second half is me just kind of weighing in a little bit with some things to think about, regarding just the dilemma that they face. And then I also created worksheets for a lot of the chapters and a lot of things that again, you may or may not go through, but checklists of things to think about when you're in the middle of a job change or divorce or, death and those types of things, just so, just something to kind of move along and check the boxes. Because a lot of times when those things are happening, we sort of paralyze and our brains are going a million miles an hour, and it's hard to really hone in on the action steps of kind of
Mm-hmm.
what do I do first. So that's really where I come in, and the clients that I work with, how I help them, but also just, the book, I think, is hopefully a good starting point for that too.
Yeah, it's great. And the one that's freshest in my mind is the one with the two couples who go on vacation with their families. They've known each other forever, and they're in this, rental house, and they're like, wow, we should buy one of these together. And I've had this exact conversation, which is probably why I love this one, with people. And you're so excited, and you can think of all the positives in this, and you're kind of envisioning all these wonderful times you're going to have there. And then this is what happened to me. Then you go home, you start thinking about it, and then all these unanswered questions. Well, what if one of them loses a job or wants to sell before we do? And you brought all of these things up, and plus many, many more, and you realize this is way more complicated than you might initially think.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And and it's not that I don't want to be like the downer of the killjoy over here. So somebody's got a great idea and I'm like, bam, 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 but it's good to just kind of know what you're up against, and have you thought about this? And it's like insurance, right? We insure against catastrophic events with certain types of insurance, like our car insurance, our home insurance, and all of that. And the same can, goes into these decisions, where one decision like that just seems, nice enough, can really, really upset the cart. And as you get older, those things can really damper your
Mm-hmm.
goals and your plans. So it's not to say don't do these things, but if you do, just make sure that you're going in there eyes wide open and covering your bases as much as you can.
Yeah, and I think it's hard sometimes for, I mean, you need an outside expert like yourself to come in and remind you of the different things that you need to think about. And
Mhm.
so it's very helpful. And it doesn't mean I mean, I agree. It doesn't mean you don't do it, but you know, you it's a good idea to put it all in writing and make decisions ahead of time. I mean, it's no different than putting your trust together or whatever. I mean, you're trying to make decisions so that if something does happen, you're not just sitting there going, "Wow, what are we going to do?" Like it's already been thought about. So,
Yeah, because recollection, when something's already happened, and then you say, "Oh, but you said this, you
mhm.
said that," and then, no, I didn't say that. It's, gosh, isn't it just nice to have something written down up front so there's just no debate? I mean, it can tear apart families, marriages, friendships.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that alone is not worth it. But there's a lot of people that oh no, we're close, and it's like it's some sort of an insult to put it into a contract or writing. And
hmm
I don't know. I disagree. I think it's actually a gift to do that because we all sort of remember bits and pieces of our stories. And if you just think about having siblings or, and thinking about a childhood memory, and like for instance, what I talked about, with losing the house and all of that, it what my siblings that were in the house at the same time kind of went with the flow. They didn't have the same hangups that I did. So we all sort of process things differently.
right, right, absolutely. Everybody's perspective is different. It's coming from, their own set of ideas, and that's very true when you partner up with people. For example, if you decide to go in with other people and buying a house, I mean, you really can't until something hits the fan. You don't really know how you'd react, and you definitely don't know how they'd react. But you can be unfortunately surprised, and I see that too with people. I'm sort of at that age where a lot of people are losing parents, and there's a lot of drama around the distribution of assets and all of that kind of stuff. And you do see families who are very close really suffering, and I think it takes everybody by surprise. It's just very odd how much these things do impact relationships.
I know it's crazy, isn't it? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
money can do some interesting things to people. I mean, on the other hand, I mean, I see these, states settle out with ease and everyone gets along wonderfully. And then you see other situations where it's the complete opposite. And it's so hard to predict that.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know. That's why if everything is just written down and crystal clear, there's really nothing to fight about.
Right.
Plus, an inheritance is a gift, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree that it's a gift. So as far as these narratives, did you start to recognize some either narratives within yourself, or do you just hear them with clients? I mean, are there some common things that you run into that you feel are kind of barriers? Like, if you keep up that story, we're not going to get where we need to go. I mean, does that?
Well, the narrative, it's an interest. I mean, so a lot of people really aren't open to acknowledging a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some are. And so it's tricky because if I, just sit down and start saying, where's this coming from? This story. But I have to, I pick up on things, I hear things, and again, most of them are pretty common thing, they're they happen over and over again, and they're and usually it with spouses and partners, we marry and we connect with opposites, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you get, two completely different stories that are coming together and finding a happy medium. But I think kind of acknowledging it and challenging some of it is the only way to start to, make some progress. So I can nudge a little bit. Like, well, you know, why, why do you think that the stock market's going to drop to zero? And then if sometimes, making a joke out of it can make it a little bit lighter, like, every company would have to go out of business for that to happen, and we'd have much, much bigger problems.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of, inching in a positive direction. Or, people that I see that have so much money that they'll never spend, and they're afraid to buy a new microwave, so
Yeah.
there's just, there's just so many different things. And a lot of it is generational too.
Yeah, that's a great point, because just because, I think people have it in their head that, well, even you talked about it as a kid, if I just have a lot of money, all the problems go away. But then people who do have a whole lot of money find that that is not, I mean, some problems go away, but there's
Hmm.
still problems, maybe different problems, maybe other problems that don't go away. And again, it just kind of comes down to your thinking. I mean, if you have plenty of money and you're afraid to buy a microwave, that's somewhat irrational. That's some habitual thing that's going on. And how do you talk to both? How do you talk to the people who don't have very much, so they're afraid, and then how do you talk to the people who have plenty and they're afraid?
I think that, it just depends. I encourage people who have plenty and are afraid to live a little, and sometimes they just simply don't. The habits are so deep and so in there that they just, won't do it. But then on the flip side of what you were saying a couple of minutes ago, I mean, I've got a chapter in the book about the broke millionaire. And this person, no matter how much more they make, they just spend to that limit. So it's not always about how much you make. I have seen people with very low salaries acquire or build, a nice portfolio over time and have nothing to worry about. So it's what we save, it's what we spend, it's what we earn on our money. So there's multiple factors. But then if people are spending way too much and they want to retire, ideally they come in or they go to see an advisor while there's still a lot of time. But if they go in a couple of years before, then there's not a whole lot that you can do other than continue to work or spend a lot less. So the options are always better, and there's far more ways to improve on the situation when we have a longer stretch of time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's a really important point. And so, when do you encourage people to, get the kind of help that you provide? What's a good age?
Oh gosh, right out of high school. But yeah, no, I mean, occasionally get calls from people that are just about to graduate from college, and a lot of my clients will send their kids to talk to me, which I'm just so in awe when I have those conversations. And they may not need a financial advisor per se, but a lot of times, like, a good conversation can really get them off on the right foot. And I've got chapters on that because there are some things to do, just getting started, building your emergency fund, getting rid of the debt, basics that you can put in place. So I think that once that's in place, it's a good idea to get some counsel or have some counsel. And it may be that you don't need a full-fledged advisor relationship until you're a little older, but there's always positives that will come out of some sort of financial education kind of in your midst, whether it's listening to podcasts or reading a book every year, just to kind of keep yourself on the right track. And if you find that you just aren't making the decisions that you feel you should, or that you should on your own, coaching is also an excellent solution alternative. when you just know yourself and you need that accountability. And I think we all need some accountability.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was just going to go there, because even when you kind of know what to do, I mean, a lot of us know what to do. I mean, that was a big part of my problem. I knew I knew what to do. I understood financial matters, but I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. So there's this gap there that you have to solve. And so,
It's our own blinders. I have another advisor do my plan
yeah, okay.
because I mean, I can do my plan, right?
Yeah.
But I want to see what they see, because we look at our own stuff, and we just, sometimes don't see it with a crystal clear lens.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's another probably story that people tell themselves is, whatever your plan is, I can't do that. I mean, I can't save that much money, or I can't pull that much out of my paycheck, or whatever it is. Do you have conversations about how they can shift that idea?
I do. It's not a zero. So if I talk to someone who wants to buy this house in 24 months, and it's like, well, you're going to have to save $5,000 a month, let's say, just, throw a number out there. They say, well, that's impossible. Well, okay, so what do we do? Save zero? Because then we're not going to go anywhere. So then you got to look at it, come up with something that you feel you can do, and then you slowly kind of move it up as you get comfortable. And I think we all, amaze our own selves at what we're capable of once we get the momentum and get in the mindset to make some changes and shift things the right direction. If I have a list of 15 action steps for someone, I don't expect them to do it all the next day. We attack a couple at a time and try ideally to attack the most pressing ones first. And that's a win. And then, if some things don't happen in year one, we still got those two or three things done, and we try to attack two or three more.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a very good answer. And I feel like people sometimes are afraid to talk to advisors because they think the ask is just going to be just more than they can do. And so they'd rather just not even go and, feel inadequate not doing it. So I love that, you find some place where they can start and prioritize things. Yeah.
They think that a lot of, and maybe every advisor is different, but that they're going to rip apart the budget and the spending and go, okay, you're done with this. You're not getting your nails done. You're not getting your hair done. You're not doing anything you like doing. No more vacations. And I always tell people like that, I'm not going to do that. You are telling me your goals. I'm going to tell you how much money we need, and we got to find it. But it's up to you to say, this is more important than this. Because for me, I'm going to get my hair done. And I know for a lot of people, it might be something else, but no, I give up a lot of things. Like I gotta get that hair done. So it's different for everyone. But if hey, this is how much I'm short, where am I going to find it? You have control. So it's not just this, hammer that's dropped and like X's in red all through your budget. You can never go out to eat again. I think that's one of the misconceptions about advisors.
Yeah, I think so too. Or they're just going to, give you numbers. And I think maybe it used to be a little more like this, honestly, where people would, you tell them your goals, they'd figure out how much you needed. And, you couldn't see a way to do it. And they wouldn't necessarily help you to find that way, I think, early on. And they just kind of be like, well, then you'll never put your kids through 4 years of college, unless you do this. They're not going for 4 years. I mean, it was a little more black and white. I feel like advisors like you just have a better understanding of people and psychology and emotions and how those things intersect with your financial plans, and so that you can make it happen more easily for people, or at least with less I don't know, making people feel inadequate or,
We're all just people, but I think part of that is that you have a lot of people that really aren't financial planners. They're investment advisors.
hmm
And investments are a piece of, what I do too, but the financial planning is where we get the roadmap, where we see the gaps. And if you don't actually engage with a planner that really truly does real planning, not
hmm
here's what you need and here's the gap, good luck, but I'll invest your money for you type thing,
Right.
because the plan will expose those gaps and then there's a conversation because it's all of the different pieces. So a lot of times you can pick up some of that money in some of the other areas that haven't been reviewed, but without that kind of holistic macro picture of your financial life, it's really hard to do that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And honestly, I'm not so sure that's been brought up before, but there is a difference between, somebody helping you invest your money and somebody doing a financial plan. And that's not always the same person. And sometimes it is, but, they're two different things and they're two different conversations. So
Absolutely.
people should have, know that. So that's a great point. And, yeah. So do you start with the financial plan? Makes sense to me that you
Ideally,
would. Yeah.
ideally.
Okay.
Um, but it's also a relationship back and forth with the plan. So if someone comes to me and they've got a really pressing issue or a need or issue, they might not want to start with pulling together all of their financial pieces. It's kind of like doing your taxes or an
Yeah.
estate plan. You've got to pull together a lot of information. So it really the timing has to be there because there's some work involved on the client side too.
hmm
So, but ideally, we start with a plan because then we know exactly where we stand, and it's not a static result because life changes. It's
hmm
dynamic, and the plan will change.
hmm
But at least we get a good idea of where we're at now, and then we, shift some things, and then we shift them again if we need to. So we just kind of keep going. But it really is an engagement. So I just like to do planning with people who are ready for it and
hmm
understand that there's, a mutual commitment there.
Yeah. Thank you. And so just we're running out of time, but I have a couple more questions. So, as far as these stories that people tell themselves, um, do you have an example maybe of something where a story was costing that person, a fair amount of kind of being, it was showing up as something detrimental to their financial plan or their financial well-being?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, there's so many stories that can be detrimental to our financial well-being. Uh, it's a good example. I mean, college planning
Mm,
and maybe your parents paid for an Ivy League education, and so you feel it is your obligation to do the same for your kids, but maybe you're a teacher and the income isn't there. If that person then goes and runs themselves ragged into debt to do that obligatory, thing that's part of their story, it can really, really screw things up in retirement. So, I mean, that's just a one idea thought or something that seems to come up a lot.
yeah, it's a great example. Very good example. And I think when it comes to our kids, sometimes we do have stories that kind of prompt us to overspend and create some problems for ourselves actually. um,
Always the
eh,
emotions. There's
yeah.
there's guilt underlying. Those are the things that we really need to address because it's not about the money. It's
hmm
about those underlying pieces that are driving it.
yeah, yeah, I love that. And when you meet with people, do you tell them do you just sort of listen and hear things and interject some things, or do you give them that awareness as well that some of your emotions and thoughts around money are going to have an influence on for the financial plan. I would imagine some people's financial plans, they kind of think too small as well. I don't know. You can tell me. But
Oh yeah, I mean, I try. I mean, I've been shut down a number of times over the years. Like no, I'm good. Let's move on. And I've been so lucky. Like my clients are just amazing, and they were really like that was. If I sent books to all my clients, that was like the first thing I did before it came out, with them in mind. So their feedback was really, really important to me. But yeah, I mean, it just depends. I mean, if it's like anything else, if someone is in a place where they want to grow, and you see something that's glaring, they may be in a good place to receive it. And then sometimes people are just not ready for it, and I've been there so many times where it's like, I know inside of myself what's going on with something, but I don't really want someone else to say it to me. I'm just not ready for it. So there's that balance.
yeah. Well, that's even more insightful. So that's great that you can see that. I really want people to be able to access your book. It's so worthwhile, and it's it's kind of entertaining, and I love a money book that is fun to read.
Yay, that was cool.
It's just so great, so and helpful.
Does that even exist? Yeah, we're trying.
So can you help people, understand how to contact you, how to access the book?
Yeah, so the book's on Amazon. There's Audible, Kindle, the hardcover. There's a website, yourmoneynarrative.com, where you can download the checklist, a couple of them you can download for free on the site. And then my office website is Maven Lane Financial Group.com. And I've got financial planning packages there, different tiers to kind of meet people at different places in their journey. And happy to chat if there's an opportunity to possibly work together.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for spending your time with me here today. I love this conversation. I hope it got people thinking and especially, ready to start working on a financial plan and whatever comes after that. So,
yeah, thank you, Michelle. This was actually really, really fun. And I can tell we're on the same page with this stuff. So
yeah.
I appreciate it. So fun talk.
Yeah, I love this conversation, and I feel like it's a big part of what's missing in the financial world are these conversations, because once you understand this, to me, this is all foundational. And then you can get ready to get wealthy. So anyway, thank you again. And look forward to connecting with you in the future. And I wish you a lot of luck with the book.
Thank you.
And thank you, Money and You audience. We love having you listen to the show. If you liked the show, please share, connect with Amy, get her book, and give us a rating and a review if you're so inclined. And we will see you next week.